Chapter 1. Death by Deadline, Rebirth by Plot. Let me start by saying, I did not sign up for this. 1 minute I was sitting in my crusty apartment, guzzling instant coffee and speed typing the last chapter of my utterly chaotic imperial romance web novel. The next, I was dead, face planted into my keyboard like a sad, overworked pancake. And then I woke up in silk robes, surrounded by eunuchs, in the middle of a scene I wrote 3 years ago. Was it a dream? No. The dream would have ended before I got castrated. Now, before you clutch your pearls, no, I didn't actually lose the crown jewels. Because apparently I transmigrated into the role of Lin Xian, yes, that Lin Xian. Minor cannon fodder. Scheming eunuch. Chapter 7, Death by Poison Victim. My own character. Was this karma? Was this because I gave him that line about having the moral compass of a brick, and then offed him with grape juice laced with cyanide? I'm not supposed to be here, I whispered to myself the moment I saw my reflection in the palace mirror. I had delicate, too pretty features, skin like porcelain, narrow, suspiciously seductive eyes, a mole under my lip that I definitely did not draw when I created this guy. I looked like the villain in a tragic opera, and I knew exactly how this story ended. Or at least I thought I did. Young Master Lin, His Majesty has requested your presence at the morning court, chirped a tiny eunuch whose voice squeaked like a mouse in a teapot. I blinked at him from my opulent jade-inlaid bed. Why? He gave a polite cough. To pour tea, right? Because Lin Xian was the chief palace eunuch, which meant I was supposed to flutter around in the background and sprinkle sarcastic commentary, while the emperor made hard eyes at the heroine. The female heroine, mind you, straight novel, hetero, very emperor loves ingenue type of plot. Perfect. All I had to do was stay in character, serve some tea, enjoy the luxury, and die on schedule. Maybe even adjust the timing a little. A peaceful death in silk pajamas sounded better than pulling all-nighters writing spicy side stories for readers who couldn't tell the difference between plot and porn. The imperial court smelled like sandalwood and subtle judgment. I glided in like a good little background character, head down, expression neutral. I wasn't trying to be noticed, which is why the second I looked up and made eye contact with the male lead, I knew I was screwed. There he was, Qian, the cold, deadly, emotionally constipated emperor who was supposed to fall in love with the female lead after she saved him from an assassination. He stared at me. Then I remembered I was holding a tea tray and quickly bowed. This humble servant greets His Majesty. He didn't respond. Not verbally, anyway. He took the tea, sipped it, and kept watching me like I was the first interesting thing he'd seen since the invention of indoor plumbing. Oh no, I thought, a chill running down my spine. Why is he looking at me like I'm the main course? I'm supposed to be a side dish, a garnish. I hurried out of the court as fast as my embroidered slippers could carry me. Back in my quarters, I flopped onto the bed. This is fine, he's just weird. He's always been weird. I wrote him that way. He stares at walls. He drinks vinegar for fun. He doesn't even like people. I muttered, gaslighting myself into a state of calm. Then came the knock on my door. His Majesty has summoned you to serve him a medicinal bath. I screamed into a silk pillow. I don't know what possessed me to think this was a normal task. Maybe it was the steam. Maybe it was the calming herbs. Maybe it was the fact that I was literally elbow-deep in goat placenta and rose oil. But when Qian walked in, shirtless, glistening, looking like a bisexual crisis wrapped in royal authority, I nearly drowned myself in the tub just to escape the awkwardness. Lin Xian, you prepared this? He asked in that low, ominous baritone. Yes, Your Majesty. He stepped in. The steam hissed as if the water knew better. I stood rigid, towel in hand, praying he wouldn't ask for a back scrub. He didn't. Instead, he took one inhale, paused, and said, You smell different. That's just goat placenta. Very fragrant this season. No, it's you, he said. Then something glowed faintly in the air between us. I blinked. A scent. Not perfume. Not herbs. It smelled like ink, cedarwood, and jasmine in the rain. My scent I realized with horror. And then his pupils dilated. Scent bonding. I had written this plot device. for the female lead. It was a rare bond between Alpha and Omega. I only added it because readers begged for more spice. Now I regretted everything. I stepped back. Nope, absolutely not. This isn't happening. Qi Yan tilted his head. Why do I feel possessive? Because you're crazy. This is illegal. I yelped. And just like that, the plot derailed faster than my mental health. I was bonded. I was doomed. I had goat placenta in my sleeves. And somehow, I had just become the love interest in my own damn story. Chapter 2. Operation Useless Eunuch. I had one goal, become background furniture. The kind no one notices. A nice decorative screen. Pretty paper lantern. A eunuch so boring he fades into the tapestry. Because if I didn't, I was going to end up on the emperor's bedpost like a tragic BL plot twist. And worse, pregnant. Do you know how offensive that is to a man who wrote absolutely no preg in bold font at the top of his own author notes? After the incident in the bathhouse, the steam-scented crime scene, I locked myself in my quarters, clutched a brush, and scribbled my strategy onto a rice scroll. Called it 10 Ways to Stay Useless, Die Early, and Avoid the Plot. Avoid eye contact with all male leads. Never bathe in royal herbs again. Eat suspicious pastries if necessary. Poison is better than plot twists. Keep my scent sealed with pickled garlic and despair. Pretend to have chronic diarrhea. The last one was already working. Unfortunately, the palace was like a clingy ex. No matter how hard I ghosted the story, it kept chasing me down. Chief Eunuch Lin, His Majesty has requested you again. Chirped the same squeaky eunuch from before. Let's call him Xiao Ding, because that's what I wanted to do. Ding him on the head with a candlestick. Tell him I'm sick. Tell him I have the runs. Tell him I ran so far I left the province. I said from under a blanket. Xiao Ding winced. He said to bring you. Personally. I froze. Personally? Qi Yan was the kind of man who didn't personally do anything. He didn't even personally blink unless it was strategically intimidating. What does he want? He said, he wants you to pour him tea and sit quietly while glowing. Xiao Ding glanced at a note. What? I sat up. Glowing? Do I look like a night lamp? Well, Xiao Ding muttered, eyes shifting toward my stomach. I narrowed my gaze. Say it. I dare you. He shut the door very fast after that. I wore 5 layers of robes, soaked my sleeves in vinegar, and mentally recited tax codes to kill any semblance of romantic energy. Qi Yan still looked at me like I was his favorite mooncake. I bowed. This humble servant is present. He gestured to the seat beside him. I froze. Your Majesty, I'm a eunuch. He blinked once. And I shouldn't sit next to you. I should stand quietly in a dark corner. Possibly underground. You're glowing again, he murmured, utterly ignoring me. I am not glowing, I hissed. He leaned in, sniffed, and smiled like someone discovering cake for the first time. Still floral. Pleasant. My eye twitched. It's the vinegar. Aged 20 years. Like my resentment. An hour later, I'd poured tea, sat quietly, and plotted 17 different deaths for myself. None of them fast enough. Qi Yan didn't speak again. He just looked, and the court looked too. Whispered. Gossip rippled like silk in a breeze. By the time I escaped back to my room, the rumors had evolved. Have you heard? His Majesty sniffed Eunuch Lin today. A maid whispered outside my screen. They say he wants to scent bond. Didn't he already? I heard Eunuch Lin's carrying twins. I screamed into my blanket. Later that night, I lit a single candle, stared at the ceiling, and whispered to the air. I wrote this as a straight novel. A straight novel. Qi Yan was supposed to fall for the heroine after she stitched up his arm and lectured him about the value of commoners. Instead, he's watching me sleep like I'm his emotional support dumpling. Was this what poetic justice felt like? Because if so, it sucked. The next morning, I tried again to escape the plot. This time, I put on a fake beard, stole a palace guard's uniform, and attempted to blend in with the Imperial Hounds training regiment. It was going great, until Qi Yan walked by, paused, tilted his head, and said, "Why is that guard glowing?" I ran. I tripped on a hound. I fell face first into a bush. The Emperor stood over me while I bled from the nose and yelled, "Stop bonding with me!" His lips quirked. Too late. Chapter 3, Medicinal Mistakes Were Made. You know that moment in a horror story when the protagonist hears a noise and still goes into the basement? Yeah. That's how I felt waking up the next morning with a mouth full of sour plum and a weird craving for bricks. No, I'm not kidding. I woke up chewing on the corner of my bamboo pillow. Tasted vaguely earthy and tragic. I sat up, rubbed my temples and groaned. No, not happening. I'm not pregnant. I'm just emotionally unwell. Let's back up. After the great bathhouse bonding incident, I'd been trying to avoid any further contact with his walking red flag majesty. But apparently fate and my hormones had other plans. In the span of 24 hours, I had gagged at the smell of jasmine tea, my favorite, burst into tears when a maid dropped a bowsy, eaten an entire jar of pickled vegetables with my bare hands, thrown up said vegetables all over a royal peony bush. At first, I thought it was food poisoning. Then I thought it was haunting. Then the palace physician took one look at me and went pale. "I'm not pregnant," I said firmly, for the 15th time. The physician pressed 2 fingers to my wrist, frowned deeply, and then dropped his head like he was mourning my dignity. "Chief Eunuch Lin, don't say it. I must inform you. If you say it, I will throw this chamber pot at your head. You are with child." Silence. I stared at him. He stared at the floor like it personally betrayed him. Then I calmly picked up the chamber pot and chucked it. "It's impossible. I'm a man. A man. I know how biology works." I snapped, pacing my quarters like a deranged goose. The physician mopped his brow. "Your condition appears to be a rare spiritual pregnancy type. Scent-bonded conception, likely triggered by highly concentrated medicinal energy and alpha pheromones. Stop talking. Combined with your omega core." "I don't have an omega core." He blinked. "You do now." I collapsed onto my futon. "This is a curse. I've been cursed. The gods are punishing me for writing 5 filler chapters about steamed buns." The physician paused. "Were they good chapters?" "They were deliciously unnecessary." He nodded respectfully. The worst part? It was still early in the pregnancy. Just enough to make me feel like a bloated balloon with emotional instability, but not enough to prove anything. No bump, no movement, just vibes and nausea. So naturally, I decided to pretend it wasn't real. Later that day, I passed Qian in the corridor. He paused, nostrils flaring like a wolf catching a particularly dumb rabbit. "You smell different," he said. I forced a smile. "That's because I bathed in garlic and despair." He stepped closer. "You're hiding something." "Yes, my crippling fear of parenthood." His gaze dropped to my stomach. I slapped his hand away before it even moved. "Do not try to touch me. If you so much as pat me like a melon at market, I swear on my ghostwriter contract I will unalive myself and haunt your tea forever," I warned. Qian, unbothered. "You're glowing again." That night he summoned me again. I tried to say no. Xiao Ding showed up with a handwritten imperial order and a muffin. I ate the muffin. I regretted it instantly. In the emperor's study, Qian poured me tea personally. A bad omen if there ever was one. "Lin Xian, you've been avoiding me," he said with that infuriatingly calm voice. "Yes, I was hoping if I vanished long enough, you'd fall in love with a potted plant or something," I said bluntly. He actually laughed. The man laughed. I glared at him. "You're enjoying this?" "Immensely." I narrowed my eyes. "This is not a romance." "Are you sure?" "You're flushed, glowing, eating strange things, throwing up in peony bushes. That sounds like a romantic subplot to me," he asked. I stood. "This is illegal." He stood too. "And yet, you're still here." I stormed out, mostly because I didn't trust myself not to throw the imperial teapot at him. Back in my quarters, I lay on my side, arms curled around my stomach. I wasn't glowing. I was scared. I never asked for this. I didn't want the palace, the drama, the attention, the ache in my lower back that had nothing to do with furniture arrangement and everything to do with a plot I couldn't rewrite. I closed my eyes and whispered to the universe. This was supposed to be a straight novel. No one answered. Chapter 4. The Emperor has bad taste. Somewhere, in the heavens above, my editor was laughing. That's the only explanation for what was happening to me. I was definitely being punished. For the slow burn. For the 20k word erotic dream sequence. For killing off the dog in Volume 2. Because now, not only was I pregnant, allegedly, but the cold, heartless, emotionally stunted male lead was actively trying to court me. With tea. With soup. With a goddamn scarf. It started in the throne room. I was standing dutifully by the pillar like the background character I was born to be, doing absolutely nothing suspicious, when Qi Yan looked up in the middle of a report and said, "Lin Xian, you look cold." I blinked. I am, in fact, made of ice. He stood up mid-court session, walked over, and draped a thick navy scarf over my shoulders like some kind of possessive winter fairy godmother. The entire court froze. An old minister choked on air. The head eunuch fainted. I naturally tried to combust on the spot. "Your Majesty, there are dozens of people here," I hissed through clenched teeth. "Let them see," he said simply. Let them what? Did he think this was some kind of imperial mating dance? Later, I cornered Xiao Ding in the servants' corridor and demanded the truth. "Has the Emperor ever done this before? With anyone?" Xiao Ding shook his head, eyes wide. "His Majesty barely speaks to people unless it's about executions. So why is he gifting me seasonal wear like it's the winter solstice sale?" "Maybe he likes you," Xiao Ding offered carefully. I stared at him in raw, unfiltered horror. "No, that's not allowed. But you're scent bonded." It was a herbal accident, which led me to a brilliant, flawless, absolutely desperate idea. I needed to redirect the plot. Specifically, redirect Qi Yan toward the female lead, the girl who was supposed to steal his cold heart, save the nation, and ride off into the epilogue with 10 babies and a jade hairpin. Not me. Not Lin Xian, emotionally unstable eunuch pregnant side character. Chapter 5. That's not bloating, that's a bump. I'm going to say something controversial. There is no justice in this world. None. Zero. Not even a scrap. Because if there were any justice, I wouldn't have woken up in a cold sweat craving vinegar eggs and grilled silk moths. I wouldn't have cried because I couldn't find my left slipper. And I definitely wouldn't have stood in front of a mirror, shirt lifted, whispering, "That's not bloat. Is that a bump?" It was subtle, small, round, soft. I poked it, screamed, loudly, in soprano. Xiao Ding came running in like the palace was on fire. "Chief Lin, are you? Get out!" I shrieked, tossing a pillow at him like an emotionally unstable dragon. He yelped and slammed the door. I turned back to the mirror, squinted, prodded again. Same result. My stomach, a formerly flat, elegant thing, now had the nerve to look like a freshly steamed bun. Maybe it's a gas bubble, maybe I ate too many sweet potatoes. I muttered, but deep down I knew. I'd written this exact symptom, described it in a bonus chapter, called it the swelling moon of destiny. God, I hated myself. The next hour was a full-blown breakdown montage. Cried in the bath. Wrote a list of baby names out of pure panic. Crossed all of them out and replaced them with mistake number 1. Tried to use Qi to check if I was still dreaming. I wasn't. Googled emergency abortion spell, in my head like that would help. By the time the physician came back, I was sitting in the dark, hugging a melon to my chest and whispering, "Is this how I die?" He blinked. "You're talking to fruit again. Better than talking to my uterus." "You don't have a uterus." "I do now." He checked my pulse, checked my stomach, checked my eyes. I was waiting for him to check my credit score next. Then he gave me that look again. The one full of pity and confusion and, "How do I even chart this?" "Well?" I asked. He nodded solemnly. "You are now officially 1 month along." I blinked. 1 month. Yes. Do you know what else is 1 month away? No. My scheduled death. He didn't laugh. Coward. I marched into the Emperor's hall like a man on a mission. Pregnant, pissed off, and too tired to care about court decorum. Qi Yan was seated, reading over scrolls, looking stupidly regal. His hair was half down, and his sleeves were rolled up just enough to reveal his forearms like some kind of cursed fan service. He looked up. Lin Xian. I marched straight to his side, slammed my palm on the table, and declared, I am with child. The court stilled. Qi Yan blinked once. I know. I paused. You what? He set down the scroll calmly. I could smell it. You could. What are you, a hound? He smiled faintly. You're glowing again. Stop saying that. The silence was thick. Ministers were exchanging shocked glances. Somewhere, someone dropped a jade inkstone. I didn't look. I was too busy trying to breathe through the sudden urge to cry. Qi Yan stood up, walked over, and the audacity, touched my belly, very gently. Don't. I'm not emotionally stable enough for this level of affection. I warned, voice cracking. He just said, You'll need better quarters. The West Wing has more sunlight. I blinked. You're redecorating? For the baby. I blinked harder. I haven't even accepted the baby. He tilted his head. It's already accepted you. I wanted to throw a shoe at him. I also wanted to curl up and sob into his very comfortable-looking robes. Hormones are a disease. Back in my room, after storming off and tripping on my new scarf, I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling again. My life was no longer mine. It belonged to the plot, the baby, the scent bond, the Emperor with the annoyingly good bone structure. I wrapped a hand around my stomach and sighed. I'm not glowing, I whispered. No one corrected me, but the bump was real. The warmth was real. And the terrifying, heart-shattering realization was starting to hit. I might actually be falling for this idiotic, oblivious, overbearing, suspiciously gentle tyrant. God help me. Chapter 6. Impregnate Meltdown. Have you ever tried to drink cursed soup at midnight under a full moon in an attempt to unpregnate yourself? No? Good. Keep it that way. Because I did. And I still woke up the next morning, nauseous, glowing, and 1 week closer to being royally knocked up. Let's rewind. After my dramatic court announcement/breakdown/unplanned baby reveal, the palace shifted faster than a live chat during a scandal. Suddenly, I had silk cushions embroidered with dragons and pacifiers, an entire wing of the palace with heated floors and mood lighting, for imperial chefs assigned to monitor my cravings, which, for the record, included grilled mushrooms, duck hearts, and dried mango dipped in soy sauce. Don't judge me. I should have felt lucky. I felt like a gilded prisoner in a 5-star uterus. One day into my new maternity suite, I cracked. I stood in front of the mirror, stared at my slightly puffier reflection, and said, No, I'm done. I refuse to be the glowing womb of destiny. I flipped open the old scrolls I'd hoarded over the years and dug into the forbidden knowledge. The plan? Break the scent bond. Abort the ark, escape the plot. The method? Cursed soup. Yes. A 200-year-old alchemical recipe said to reverse unnatural bonds of qi and misaligned fate. Also known as mystic pepperbone eggplant decoction. Side effects included temporary loss of voice, identity confusion, mild time loops, and possible feral behavior. Perfect. It took me 3 hours, 2 near explosions, and 1 poor servant who walked in at the wrong time and saw me shirtless holding a phoenix root. I'm making soup, I shrieked, hair full of herbs. He fled. I finally got it bubbling, choked on the steam, and whispered to the pot, If you work, I'll write an apology novel to every character I've ever wronged. Then I drank it, tasted like moldy regret and betrayal. I passed out instantly. When I woke up, the room was spinning. My tongue felt like sandpaper. My chi was scrambled. I looked in the mirror and, I'm still me. I still look like a second male lead. I muttered. Then I looked down. The bump was still there. Still. Freaking. Glowing. Damn it. I used eggplant and everything. I shouted to the heavens. That's when Xiao Ding returned. Chief Lin, get dressed. His Majesty. He's throwing you a surprise banquet. He panted. I froze. Why? To celebrate your pregnancy. Why? They made me sit on a golden pillow. A golden pillow. I had barely managed to scrub the soup off my robes and repaint my face when Qi Yan entered, looking disgustingly pleased. He stood up, raised his goblet, and said, "To the first imperial heir, and the one who carries him." Everyone clapped. Someone cried. I died inside. I smiled politely and whispered to Xiao Ding, "Find me poison. Now." "I can't, you're not allowed sharp objects anymore," he whispered back. The Empress Dowager tried to give me a jade rattle. An old general offered me a war horse for the baby. A high priest declared I was the reincarnation of a heavenly goose of fertility. And Qi Yan? He leaned close, looked me dead in the eye and said, "I like seeing you happy." I stared at him. "This isn't happiness. This is a hostage situation." He chuckled, as if this was all cute. It wasn't cute. It was hell in a banquet hall. Later that night, alone in my massive bed with pregnancy-safe incense and anxiety-laced breath, I curled around my cursed bump and whispered, "I am not glowing. I am suffering attractively. There's a difference." But no one listened, especially not the little flutter I felt just under my skin. My eyes widened. No. Did you just kick me?" I whispered. A pause. Another flutter. "Oh gods, it's real." I whispered, eyes misting. The fear, the pain, the bond, the weird food cravings. None of it compared to that one flicker of life inside me. And just like that, despite everything, I felt something terrifying. Hope. Chapter 7. The FL fights back. They say the past always comes back to haunt you. Well, mine showed up in a powder blue gown, carrying a sword, and looking like she was 2 seconds away from shoving it somewhere very non-metaphorical. Her name? Su Wan, the original female lead of this novel. The innocent country girl with a tragic backstory, unshakable moral compass, and exactly the kind of virginal righteousness that makes readers cry and authors regret their life choices. And me? I was the pregnant eunuch glowing like a sacred lantern and occupying her male lead. I met her in the middle of the imperial garden. I was trying to balance a bowl of hawthorn jelly on my baby bump without spilling it. Su Wan was striding toward me like a protagonist with a vendetta. Her eyes swept me head to toe, then to the bump, then back to my face. "You!" I blinked. "Me! You're the reason the Emperor won't see me." I smiled thinly. "That's a bold accusation for someone who just got back from exile, darling." She narrowed her eyes. "I stitched up his wound with my own hands. I fed him wild mushrooms. I taught him to love again." "Wow, you really did all that?" "Because he just fed me duck soup and rubbed oil on my stretch marks," I said, biting into a jelly. She looked like she wanted to slap me. I braced for it. Instead, she went away. "All right, you're back. We can fix this," I said an hour later, pacing my quarters while Su Wan sipped aggressively at my pregnancy-safe tea. "You say that like I'm not watching the Emperor spoon-feed you breakfast." He's confused. If we can just get him to spend one meaningful scene alone with you, he might remember. I snapped. Su Wan raised an eyebrow. "And you think I'm going to let you play matchmaker for my romance?" I shrugged. "You want the crown. I want an early retirement. Our goals align. Fine, one chance. But if he kisses you again, I'm stabbing something," she said. "Fair. And if I end up any more pregnant, I'm stabbing myself," I said. We picked a classic setup. Injured damsel, moonlit balcony, emotionally vulnerable emperor. Perfect, right? Su Wan faked a twisted ankle. Qi Yan was summoned. I hid in the shadows behind a silk screen with a sprig of dried mint in my mouth to dull my scent. It went well, until it didn't. Qi Yan arrived. Saw her sitting there in the moonlight, looking tragic and elegant and definitely heroine-worthy. He approached, sat beside her. I peeked through the screen, holding my breath. "Wanner," he said softly. Yes, it's working." She looked up, lips trembling. Your Majesty. Then he said, you remind me of Lin Xian. He likes to sit here too. My heart stopped. Su-won blinked. I'm literally bleeding. He bleeds when he eats crab. I screamed internally. Then he stood up, walked past Su-won, right to my hiding place, pulled back the curtain and said, I know you're there. You always hide when you're nervous. I stared up at him wide-eyed. Why do you know that? He smiled gently. Because I know you. Su-won let out a very audible groan. Back in my quarters, I collapsed face first onto my pillow while Su-won paced the room, muttering curses in 3 dialects. I stitched that man's flesh with my own hands. I read him poetry. I slept in a tent to bond with him during a snowstorm, she said. I literally bathed in soup and got scent bonded by accident. Trust me, this was not the plan. I mumbled into the bedding. She stopped pacing. So what now? I rolled onto my back and stared at the ceiling. Now? We stall. We wait. And we hope to hell that he'll fall for you. Su-won crossed her arms. You really hate being the center of attention, don't you? I came here to be background noise. Now I'm a glowing, moody omega with cravings for grilled frogs and a baby that kicks during policy meetings. I whispered. We sat in silence for a while. Then she said, I'll help you. I blinked. What? You're an idiot. But I can't stand watching you suffer through this romantic disaster alone. I stared at her. Are we friends now? No, but if this ends with you married, I'm burning the imperial palace down, she said firmly. Fair. That night, the baby kicked again. I curled my hand around the bump, eyes fluttering shut. I don't know what kind of story this is anymore, but it's mine now, isn't it? I murmured. The baby kicked again, and I realized maybe I wasn't the background character after all. Maybe I was just the wrong author for the right story. Chapter 8. Escape plan number 347 fails spectacularly. Let me be clear, I wasn't running away. I was strategically retreating from a situation that had spiraled completely out of control. That situation being a possessive emperor with emotionally stunted romance skills. A scent bond that only got stronger every time he touched me. A fetus inside me who kicked every time Chi Yen said something remotely tender. It was either run or get married. And I'm not the marrying type. I'm the die in episode 7 type. So I did what any rational person would do. I stole a palace maid's uniform, stuffed my bump under a corset, terrible idea, and tried to sneak out through the laundry carts. Are you sure about this? Su-won asked, arms crossed, watching me tie a mop to my back like a wig. I struck a pose. Do I look like a mildly disgruntled woman named Plum Blossom? Because I feel like one. You look like a pregnant eunuch in a dress. Harsh. Accurate. She sighed. Fine. You have until the second watch bell. If you're not out of the gates by then, I'll fake my own death. Again. I'm great at that. Su-won handed me a jar of pickled ginger. For the nausea. Thanks, Mom. The plan was simple. Blend in with the laundry maids. Hitch a ride on the outgoing linen cart. Fake a peasant identity. Flee to the southern provinces. Sell steamed buns. Raise my kid in obscurity. Write this entire mess off as a hallucination. Things went wrong somewhere between step 1 and my third craving-induced snack break. Because guess who just so happened to be taking a casual stroll through the servant quarters at that exact moment? That's right. His Imperial Highness Emperor Chi Yen, romantic menace. He froze. I froze. A mouthful of candied lotus root fell out of my mouth mid-chew. Your Majesty, fancy seeing you here, I said, voice way too high for comfort. He stared at me, at my mop wig, at my bloated midsection, at the maid uniform I definitely had not tailored correctly. Why are you dressed like the palace mop girl? He asked. I'm undercover. For a self-help mission. He raised an eyebrow. Panicked. I'm doing charity work? You're hiding. I'm rediscovering myself, okay? He stepped closer. I took a step back. He looked me up and down, then sighed. The corset doesn't fit. I flinched. That's body shaming. You're glowing again. Stop saying that. He caught my wrist before I could bolt. His hand was warm. Too warm. Stupid comforting. "Let me go," I said weakly. "You're trying to run away from me," he said. "Correction. I'm trying to run away from everything. It's not personal." He looked at me for a long moment. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear it, he said, "Would it be easier if I let you go?" I froze. The words hit like a slap I wasn't ready for. My chest ached. Not just physically. Not just hormonally. It was that real kind of ache. The one that came from realizing someone actually cared when you'd been trying to pretend they didn't. "I don't know," I said truthfully. He stepped closer. Carefully. Like I was a startled bird about to fly away. "You're not a prisoner, Lin Xian. You can leave whenever you want." I looked up at him and saw the lie. Because if I left, really left, he'd let me go with his hands, but not with his heart. And I didn't know what was worse. Back in my quarters, again, because that's how all my plans end, I peeled off the disguise and sat on the floor. My bump had started showing through my normal robes now. My back ached. My ankles were swelling. I had a craving for shrimp paste and red bean ice cream, which shouldn't go together but somehow did. The baby kicked. I groaned. "You're just like your other father. Always showing up at the worst possible moment." Suwon came in and took one look at me. Escape fail. Crushed by mop-based hubris. "Good. Because you're starting to look less like a flight risk and more like an exhausted fiancé," she said. I shot her a look. She just smirked. "Don't worry. We'll try again." But deep down, I wasn't sure I wanted to, and that terrified me more than the pregnancy ever did. Chapter 9. Baby Kicks and Confessions. There's a moment in every tragic farce where the fool realizes he might not be joking anymore. For me, that moment came around midnight. I was sitting alone on the floor of my palace chamber, wrapped in a thick robe embroidered with phoenixes I never asked for, eating mung bean porridge with one hand and rubbing my belly with the other. And then it happened. A real solid kick. Not a flutter. Not a bubble. A full-on, "Hey, I'm in here and I'm annoyed" kind of kick. I froze. "Did you just... Was that you?" I whispered, blinking at my bump. Another kick. I stared down. The kick was to the right, firm, deliberate, like the little monster inside me was trying to tap out Morse code. I pressed my palm to the spot, eyes wide. "I see, so we're at the violent rebellion stage of womb development," I said slowly. Then I started crying. Let's get one thing straight. I don't cry. I complain. I throw furniture and fake my death and storm dramatically out of rooms I can't afford. But this was raw, unfiltered, terrifying. I was alone, pregnant, disgraced, in theory, and one emotionally unavailable emperor away from a nervous breakdown. I curled up on the floor and muttered into my sleeve, "I am not maternal. I don't know how to raise anything. I once killed a cactus by looking at it too hard. And now I have to keep you alive." The bump answered with another soft, rhythmic movement. I cried harder. That's where Chi Yen found me. Yes, again. Because apparently the man had a sixth sense for my emotional distress, or just me in general. He didn't knock. He never did anymore. He just opened the door like he owned the place. He did. And paused when he saw me on the floor. A soggy mess of tears, porridge, and panic. "Lin Xian," he said softly. I looked up. My lip trembled. Then, in the most pitiful voice I've ever produced, I whispered, "He kicked me." Chi Yen blinked. "The baby?" "No, the royal ghost of shame passed." "Yes, the baby." He crossed the room in 3 long strides, knelt beside me and reached out, hesitating, for once. "May I?" I nodded, too emotionally unstable to stop him. He placed his hand gently over mine, on my belly, and waited. Silence. Then a tiny kick. His eyes widened. Not his usual calm, cold glimmer. Not the polished emperor mask. This was something raw, real, human. "I felt that," he whispered. "You don't get to cry. Only one of us is allowed to emotionally implode per scene." I sniffled. He chuckled. "I won't cry." "Good." Pause. "But I am going to say something," he added quietly. I still on my stomach. "No." "Yes." I'm unstable. If you confess, I might throw up on your lap. Then I'll kneel lower. I groaned. You're impossible. And you're glowing again. I slapped his shoulder, gently out of habit. Then he said it. The words I'd been running from since this whole disaster started. I love you. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't hear him, but because every inch of me heard him. My bones, my breath, the little heartbeat thumping under my skin. I love you not because of the bond, not because of the child, just you. He said again, voice steady. I wanted to believe it, but believing meant accepting all of it. My body, my feelings, this terrifying, irreversible transformation from side character to someone who mattered. So I said, that's nice. He stared at me. That's nice? He repeated, like I told him the weather was decent. I'm pregnant and emotionally compromised, I said, standing with a wobble. I'm not legally allowed to process intimacy. Lin Xian. Nope. You do not get to drop a life-changing confession while I'm crying and leaking from 5 emotional wounds. Try again later. Preferably when I'm wearing pants without an elastic waistband. I said, pointing at him. He sighed, amused. You're terrified. Of course I am. I'm in love with a man who was supposed to fall for someone else. I'm carrying a baby I never planned to conceive. And I have no idea how to do any of this. I shouted. Qian stood up, calm as ever. Then he pulled me into his arms. Not possessively. Not because of the bond. Just because I needed it. You don't have to know how, you just have to stay. He murmured into my hair. I closed my eyes. And for once I didn't run. Chapter 10. Palace politics get petty. You ever get the feeling the whole world's plotting against you? Yeah. Try being visibly pregnant in a palace where half the people want your seat, the other half want your head, and the last half are still arguing over whether you count as a man, a concubine, or an imperial fever dream. Yes, that's 3 halves. That's how broken the math is around here. After Qian confessed and I didn't die of emotional overload, miracle, things changed. Suddenly, palace maids bowed deeper. Ministers shut up faster. And the Empress Dowager smiled at me like I was a particularly well-fed pigeon she intended to poison. Worse, the concubines started getting bold. Like really bold. It started innocently, well, as innocent as passive-aggressive death stares over breakfast can be. I waddled into the dining hall one morning. Yes, waddled. My bump had declared itself the protagonist of my silhouette, and found my usual seat dusted in suspicious white powder. I raised an eyebrow. Is this powdered sugar or powdered murder? Xiao Ding poked it with a chopstick and immediately passed out. I sighed. Murder, then? Then came the gossip. Did you hear? His Majesty's pregnant eunuch is actually a fox spirit. I heard he bewitched the emperor with forbidden incense. No, it's scent-bonding sorcery. Very high level. Involves goat placenta and snake wine. Okay, that last one was accidentally true. But I was desperate. All right. Things reached a boiling point at the Imperial Luncheon for Harmony and Goodwill, a poorly named event where concubines wore smiles sharper than their hairpins. I had been seated near the emperor, of course, and was halfway through a delightful plate of lemon-glazed duck when it happened. A crunch under my teeth. My fork paused. I spat gently into a napkin. A sharp shard of porcelain glinted in the sunlight. I stared at it, then at my plate, then at the smiling concubine 3 seats away, fanning herself like a bored executioner. Oh, so it's that kind of party, I said calmly. I stood, picked up my slipper, and hurled it across the table. It hit her right in the forehead. Chaos exploded. Concubines screamed. Servants dropped trays. One eunuch fainted. Not Xiao Ding, surprisingly. Qian stood, expression darkening like a storm cloud dipped in rage. Who tampered with the food? He asked, dangerously quiet. No one answered. I lifted my bump slightly. Listen, I'm pregnant, not helpless. But if one more dainty viper in a pearl hairpin tries to assassinate me, I swear I will give birth in this hall and name the baby Spite. Su Wan choked on her tea. Qian stepped down from the head table and came straight to me. Are you all right? He asked, already checking my pulse. my breath, my soul probably. I'm fine, the baby's fine. But the next person who calls me a seductress gets smacked with the other slipper. I said, voice tight. That night I couldn't sleep. The porcelain crunch haunted me. Not because it scared me, but because it confirmed something I hadn't let myself think before. They want this baby gone. Not just me. The air. And suddenly it wasn't just about me anymore. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands around my stomach, and whispered to the quiet room. I'm sorry I made jokes. This isn't funny anymore, is it? The baby kicked gently, reassuring, calm. I teared up. I'll protect you. I don't care what I have to become, I said. Qian came in a while later. He didn't speak, just knelt beside me and pressed his forehead to my bump like it was sacred. I posted guards outside your room, he said. I want names, I murmured. He didn't ask who. He just said, already gathering evidence. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man I'd spent the whole story avoiding, hating, mocking, falling for without meaning to. You meant it when you said you loved me, I said. He nodded. Even when I'm angry and swollen and smell like ginger pickles? You're my whole world, he said, like it was the simplest truth. And suddenly the weight didn't feel so unbearable anymore, because I wasn't carrying it alone. Chapter 11. The baby gender reveal duel. I woke up to the sound of fireworks. Fireworks. At dawn. Are we at war? Did the palace explode? Did someone finally assassinate the concept of subtlety? I croaked, clutching my bump. Xiao Ding burst into the room, wild-eyed and panting. Chief Lin, His Majesty. He planned a gender reveal. I sat bolt upright. A what? A gender reveal imperial contest. I stared at him like he'd grown a second head. What even is that? Xiao Ding pulled a scroll from his sleeve like it physically pained him to exist in this timeline. Proclamation from His Majesty, he wheezed, unrolling it. I read it aloud with horror. To celebrate the divine fruit of our bond, a tournament of predictions shall be held. He who guesses correctly shall receive a title. The wrong shall be flogged. Long live the empire. Long live my glowing consort. There was a pause. I took a breath, then screamed into a pillow. By the time I waddled to the imperial courtyard, it was packed. Officials, concubines, nobles, 5 mystics, 2 fortune-tellers, and a chicken I did not recognize were all gathered. A stage had been built. A stage. For my womb. Qian stood beside it, calm as always, dressed in imperial black with golden thread and a faint smirk that screamed, yes, I orchestrated this and no, I have no shame. I glared at him. You threw a party about my uterus. He offered me a goblet of plum juice. You're glowing. Don't make me pour this on your robe. The highlight of the event? A sacred gender-revealing phoenix. Yes, a literal mythical bird flown in from the southern isles that was trained, somehow, to fly toward either a blue perch or a pink one, indicating whether the child would be male or female. Who invented this? Why did we allow it? Why was I standing on a stage next to a bird that looked like it wanted to peck me to death? The announcer cleared his throat. Presenting the glorious fire-winged oracle phoenix of One Zhou. The crowd clapped. Someone wept. Qian leaned over. Are you nervous? I'm one loud bang away from giving birth in front of a priest, I hissed. The handler whispered to the phoenix. It chirped, flapped, took off. I held my breath. It soared into the air in a dramatic loop, wings glittering in the sunlight, divine music swelling, only to land on neither perch. It crash-landed on the food table, squawking, wings flailing, and knocked over a ceremonial cake. Everyone screamed. I blinked, then said, That's a metaphor. Qian coughed. There's a backup plan. Of course there is. There's always a backup disaster. I muttered. Just when I thought the madness was over, one of the mystics stepped forward. A very old man in 5 layers of red and purple, with eyebrows so long they could be woven into rope. He bowed deeply. I have seen a vision. Oh no, I muttered. The child is both. He intoned. The crowd gasped. I blinked. Come again. Twins, one boy, one girl, born of the heavenly bond, destined to bring balance to the empire. He said dramatically. Qian looked stunned. I laughed, then promptly fell over sideways because I'd forgotten my center of gravity had shifted. Later that evening, post-panic, post-laugh crying, and post-removal of a particularly aggressive phoenix feather from my sleeve, I sat in my quarters and stared at the ceiling. Twins. Twins. I could barely handle one kick at a time. Now I was getting double the chaos? Qian entered, holding a bowl of honeyed lotus seeds like peace offerings. He sat beside me, quiet, calm. Are you angry? He asked. I'm tired and mildly cursed, but weirdly not angry, I said. He fed me a seed. Pause. Then I said, you know you're insane, right? He nodded. I'm in love. I rolled my eyes. That doesn't mean you throw me a prophecy-themed fertility contest. I wanted everyone to know I'm proud of you. That shut me up. For a second, I actually felt safe, seen, loved. Qian, I never wanted this. I still don't know if I'm ready for any of it. I said softer than I meant to. He took my hand. You don't have to be, you just have to let it be real, he said. And for once, I did. Chapter 12. Emperor in Love, MC in Denial. I once wrote that love was a battlefield. What I meant was, love is an awkward, slow-moving avalanche that crashes into you while you're trying to eat cold dumplings in peace. Because that's exactly where Qian found me. Half-dressed, bun in mouth, curled up in a sunlit corner of my room, trying to convince myself I was not emotionally unraveling after learning I was carrying twins. Yes, twins. 2 imperial heirs. From one unfortunate accidental bath. Because my life, apparently, is a joke written by a drunk god with a pregnancy fetish. Why are you hiding? Qian asked from the doorway. I didn't look at him, just bit into the dumpling and mumbled, I'm not hiding. I'm reflecting. He walked in anyway, sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat of him but not close enough to scare me off. You didn't come to the afternoon court. I'm in mourning. For what? My abdominal muscles. He didn't laugh. He didn't joke. He just looked at me, and that's when I knew something was off. Qian wasn't here to banter, or flirt, or kiss my forehead in front of horrified ministers. No, this wasn't a performance. This was a quiet moment, which somehow felt more dangerous. I stiffened. What? I've been thinking, he said. No good sentence has ever started that way. He smiled faintly. You're scared. Still not a sentence that calms me. Lin Xian. I stopped chewing. Slowly, I turned to face him. He met my eyes, serious, unblinking. And then he said it. No build-up. No dramatic moonlight. Just soft, steady destruction. I want to marry you. I choked on the dumpling, coughed violently, flapped my hands. Qian patted my back like I was a panicked goose. When I finally wheezed, what? He repeated it, calm, confident, certain. I want to marry you. Like, legally? Yes. Like imperial decree, matching robes, ceremonial hairpins, that kind of marriage? Yes. I gaped at him. You're proposing to a man you knocked up with twins after a bathhouse accident. I'm proposing to the person I love. No, you're proposing to the person who accidentally usurped your heterosexual life. Qian's mouth twitched. You didn't usurp anything. You remake it. Better. I stood up, pacing. Do you even know what you're saying? I'm not a noblewoman. I'm not even a woman. I'm a sarcastic eunuch with boundary issues and emotional constipation. Qian followed me, slow and patient. You're also brave, brilliant, infuriating in a way I can't stop thinking about. And you're the only person who makes this palace feel like a home instead of a prison. I froze, because deep down I wanted to say yes. God, I wanted to say yes, but I'd spent so long surviving this story, dodging fate, mocking romance, pushing people away. I didn't know how to say it, so I did what I always did. I deflected. I'm pregnant, emotional, and glowing against my will. You don't want to marry me. You want to marry the idea of me. I snapped. I want all of it, even the parts you're terrified to give, he said. And what if I say no? I'll still love you. And if I run again, I'll still wait for you. I felt like the floor had been pulled out from under me. You're ruining all my defenses, I whispered. Qian stepped closer, touched my hand. I'm not trying to ruin them. I'm trying to earn the right to stand behind them with you, he said. I burst into tears, not pretty ones. Messy, sniffling, hiccup-laced sobs that made me question everything about my reputation as a snarky palace menace. Qian just held me. No pressure, no demands, just arms around me, firm and safe. Later, when I could finally breathe, I muttered, "You really want to marry me?" He nodded. "I'm wearing soup-stained pajamas right now. I've seen worse. I farted in my sleep 2 nights ago." "I know. And you still want to marry me?" He leaned in, brushed his lips against my temple, and whispered, "Especially now." I didn't say yes, not yet, but I didn't say no either. And for me, that was already the beginning of something terrifyingly real. Chapter 13. The final chapter was a lie. You ever read the ending of a book and think, wait, no, this can't be right? Yeah. Try living inside one and realizing you're the one rewriting it, while pregnant with twins, emotionally compromised, and trying not to throw up from nerves and nostalgia. Because today it hit me. The final battle was supposed to happen tomorrow. The one I wrote. The one that ends the whole story. Where the emperor faces rebellion, the female lead sacrifices herself, the palace burns. And the rebellion came early, started at dusk. I was in my chambers, organizing baby socks into aggressive color-coded categories. Don't judge me. It calmed my nerves. When shouting burst in, pale and panting, "Chief Lin, if it's another Phoenix-related prophecy, I swear. There's a siege, the outer gates. General Mu betrayed us. The rebels are already in the east courtyard." He gasped. I blinked. "I'm sorry." "What?" Then, behind him, a boom shook the floor. The windows rattled. My water glass tipped. And somewhere in the distance, screams. "Where's Qian?" I demanded, standing too fast. Xiao Ding steadied me. "He went to the front hall. He left orders for you to be taken to the safe wing." I stared at the plush cushions, the silk robes, the stupid socks. "No, no, no, no. This isn't how it's supposed to go," I muttered. Because in the original story, the emperor doesn't survive this battle. A noble death. But now, I had 2 heartbeats inside me, and something terrifying to lose. I waddled out of the chamber like a very determined goose and shoved past 3 guards yelling, "But your grace," the emperor said. I didn't care. If the plot was back on track, then someone had to derail it. Again, the palace was chaos. Smoke filled the corridors. The east wing was half on fire. Soldiers screamed. Blades clashed. The banners I helped design were being used as torches. I found Qian standing on the steps of the Jade Hall, sword drawn, cloak torn, hair loose like a wild legend. And for one surreal moment I saw it. The way I'd written him. Majestic, tragic, doomed. And I hated it. I hated it because I knew what was supposed to happen next. He sees me. He smiles. He dies protecting the empire. But he turned and saw me. And instead of smiling, he dropped his sword. "Lin Xian, what the hell are you doing here?" he said hoarsely, rushing to me. "You're not dying today. That's an order." I snapped, grabbing his sleeve. He looked stunned. Another explosion rocked the ground. A rebel banner fell. Qian pulled me behind him instinctively, shielding me with his whole body. "You're pregnant and unarmed. You shouldn't be here," he said. "I'm the one who make choices for myself," I said. We stood back to back, smoke rising, shouts in the air. And then a cry, high, clear, and agonizing. The rebels had broken through the gates. Qian raised his sword. The air shimmered. No, really, it shimmered. Like the plot itself hesitated. Like the world paused. And then, it cracked. Like ice. Like something written in stone deciding maybe it doesn't have to be this way after all. I don't know if it was fate, or the scent bond, or divine pity, but the tide turned. Loyal guards flooded in. The west wall held. Chief General appeared like a war god with his sword raised and an entire unit behind him. And Qi Yan lived. We lived. Later, after the fires were out, after the traitors were chained, after I'd vomited behind a pillar from adrenaline and third trimester chaos, I stood on the palace steps and whispered, "It wasn't supposed to go this way." Qi Yan came up behind me, arms around my waist. "No, it went better," he said softly. I leaned back into him, exhausted. Alive. "You didn't die. You didn't either." We laughed. It hurt. I was terrified. But for once I wasn't alone. Chapter 14. A royal birth and an even wilder twist. No one warned me that labor would feel like being assassinated from the inside. Not the physicians. Not the mystics. Not the traitorous old eunuch who whispered, "It'll feel like a mild pressure." Mild pressure. My entire lower body was under siege. My spine was folding in on itself. My insides were trying to escape like prisoners in a jailbreak. And I was one contraction away from breathing fire. It started at the most inappropriate time possible. During a strategy meeting. I was seated beside Qi Yan, nodding politely while some general droned on about troop distribution, when I felt a snap. Not an emotional one, physical one, followed by the unmistakable warm sensation of betrayal. I blinked, looked down. Then, in the most horrifyingly calm voice I've ever used, I said, "Either I peed myself, or my water just broke." Xiao Ding screamed. Qi Yan jumped up like the table was on fire. The general passed out. And I, of course, tried to stand and immediately crumpled like a dumpling wrapper. "Don't panic, I'm fine. This is normal. I've read at least 5 novels about this." I gasped. Another contraction hit. I screamed, loud enough to scare 3 birds off the palace roof. "Actually, I'm not fine, I'm going to die." Somehow, I ended up flat on my back in the imperial birthing chamber, which, despite its name, looked suspiciously like a war tent with too many flowers. A dozen midwives fluttered around me. Su Wan stood at my head feeding me crushed ice with a spoon like I was a feverish royal hostage. Qi Yan tried to hold my hand. I slapped him. "You did this to me." He nodded solemnly. "I accept full responsibility. You and your damn bathhouse pheromones." He kissed my forehead. "You're doing amazing. I swear if you tell me I'm glowing, I'll throw a baby at you." Hours passed. Or minutes. Time became meaningless. There was only pain, and yelling, and the very real fear that I would somehow sneeze out a royal air without meaning to. Then, finally, movement, chaos, noise, and then, a cry, followed by another. 2 tiny wails split the room like firecrackers. And I sobbed, uncontrollably, loudly, grossly, because they were real. They were here, and they were mine. Qi Yan was crying too. The man who had walked through fire, fought wars, stared death in the face without blinking, now blubbering like a proud ant at a school play. "They're beautiful," he whispered, cradling one in each arm. I smiled through tears. "Of course they are. They came out of me." The midwife approached. "Congratulations, Your Grace. A boy and a girl." I reached out weakly. Qi Yan helped me sit up so I could hold them both. They were warm, small, heavy in that real way. The boy was frowning already. The girl had her tiny fist curled like she was ready to punch destiny. I loved them instantly, and somehow, impossibly, they felt like home. Just as I was settling in, eyes drooping, ready to pass out for 2 weeks straight, an old monk shuffled into the room with a scroll. "The names have arrived," he declared. I blinked. "The what now?" "From the heavens, as promised by the Phoenix prophecy. The children are reincarnations of 2 souls with karmic ties," he said. Qi Yan raised an eyebrow. "What sort of ties?" The monk unrolled the scroll dramatically. I held my breath. Then I read the names and nearly dropped both babies. Because they're bold and unmistakable were 2 very familiar names. One was my old editor. The other was my former beta reader who kept demanding side stories. I stared at the monk. "I'm being haunted by reader feedback," This is my punishment for ignoring comment sections, I muttered. Later that night, the palace quiet, the chaos settled. I lay in bed with the twins tucked against me. Qian curled at my side. He was tracing gentle circles on my arm, watching me like I was the last truth in a world full of noise. I still can't believe you did it, he whispered. I looked down at the babies, then at him, then closed my eyes. I can because for once, I wasn't writing someone else's story. I was living mine, I said softly, and it wasn't perfect. It wasn't clean, but it was real, and it was mine. Chapter 15. Happily ever after wasn't in the script. If you told me a year ago that I'd end up as the pregnant male consort of the cold-blooded emperor, giving birth to mystical twins and sleeping in a bed made of goose-down anxiety, I would have laughed in your face, then rewritten the ending out of spite. And yet, here I was, alive, married, exhausted, and terrifyingly happy. The twins were 3 months old and already more powerful than most court officials. I mean that literally. The girl could silence a room with a single sneeze. The boy once made a general wet himself by glaring at him mid-poop. They were royalty, born of a scent bond, a divine phoenix, and several poor life decisions. And they were perfect. Unfortunately, they also had my sarcasm and Qian's terrifying calm. A dangerous mix. Today was supposed to be peaceful. A calm morning. Tea. A walk. Maybe a nap while someone else held my offspring. Instead, I woke up to a flaming scroll in the crib and Suwon yelling, "Your son is trying to start a cult." I staggered into the nursery, hair a mess, robe half-tied. "Why is there fire?" I groaned. Suwon pointed to a pile of incense and feathers. Because the boy spit up on a shrine and the old monk said it was divine intervention. The baby burbled. I stared at him. "You are 5 kilograms of chaos in a velvet wrapper." He smiled. My heart melted. I gave up. Qian found us moments later, entirely unbothered. "You left me with the children," I accused, holding both like I was balancing sacred fruit. "You said you wanted to bond." "I wanted to bond with sleep." He kissed my forehead. "You're glowing. Say it again and I will throw this baby at you." The baby gurgled in agreement. Later that day, I was dragged into a council meeting by force. Not because I cared about politics, I absolutely didn't, but because apparently being the emperor's consort now came with influence. And by influence, I mean people bow when I enter a room and hand me memos I immediately lose. Qian, sitting on his ridiculous golden chair, motioned for me to sit beside him. I did, grudgingly. "Are we here to talk about trade?" I asked, yawning. "The Western lords want to know if they can name their next heir after our daughter," Qian replied. I blinked. "Why?" "They think she's an omen of prosperity. Tell them to name a goat after her first. See how that works out." He laughed. The court stared. They still weren't used to him laughing, let alone at me. That night, after the twins finally fell asleep, after a coordinated screaming duet that could be weaponized, I stepped out onto the palace balcony. The moon was full. The air was still. I stood there, arms crossed, robe loose, wondering how the hell I'd gotten here. Not dead. Not alone. Not background noise. Qian joined me moments later. "You look tired," he said gently. "I look like I've been hit by 2 very tiny royal carts," I replied. He chuckled, slipped his arms around my waist from behind. "You're still glowing." I sighed. "Stop romanticizing my sleep deprivation." "You like it." "Maybe." We stood there in silence, rested my head on his shoulder, and whispered, "I think I love you now." I never thought I'd be someone's ending, but here I was. Not a plot twist, not a trope, not a tragic side character. Just me, Lin Xian, father, husband, ex-eunuch, legendary glow stick of destiny. And, for the first time in a long, long time, happy.